Before I introduce our great speakers, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about our origin story. So, One Chance to Grow Up was formed in Colorado about a dozen years ago. As you may recall, Colorado was, and Jordan knows this, was the first state to, by the ballot, legalize recreational marijuana. John Hickenlooper was the governor. In early 2013, he pulled together a task force to basically come up with the rules for this new industry that had never been regulated or legal before. And in that task force, they were asked, they had a consultant advisor to rate their priorities for the rulemaking. And the last priority was protecting kids and public safety. And it was literally the next day that several parents, concerned parents, got together and founded One Chance to Grow Up. And our mission has been the same since then, which has been basically to go to the next slide here, to advocate for transparency, education, empowerment, and policy change. And we've now got a staff of 8 expert consultants and a great advisory board and over 10,000 members from every state in the country who are concerned about what's happening on this issue. And what we found, I guess I should mention one other thing, is that we were formed after it was already legalized. And so we don't really take a position on the legalization. We're about protecting the kids. We want to protect our kids as this has gone forth across the country. We've gone now from Colorado to many of the states, and now in the last few years here in Washington, D.C. And just quickly, if you see on the right of this slide, what we found, and you're going to hear more about this, and the main thing I want to point is the fourth bullet at the bottom, which states are proficient at regulating the business of THC, but they really struggle with regulating the product. They don't have the FDA skills in-house or the ability to really regulate the product well. And so you're going to learn more about that today. And the result of that, of course, is that families are being harmed and kids' futures taken away. So today we have a fabulous lineup of speakers. First, you're going to hear about the science of today's THC from Dr. Eleanor McCants-Katz. We're thrilled to have her with us. She was appointed by President Obama as Chief Medical Officer and then as the head of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, a division of the Health and Human Services with over an $8 billion annual budget. She ran that for President Obama as well as for President Trump, all during his first term. And we're thrilled to have Eleanor. She's going to tell us about the science. And then next we'll hear from James Corbett. James is the CEO or principal of Initium Health. Initium Health developed with the University of Colorado School of Public Health the first in the country education campaign on high-potency THC. It was mandated by the legislature, and that was some work that we did to enable that to pass into law. And he's going to show us what we are doing in Colorado to educate our citizens about the dangers of this high-potency products. And then you're actually going to hear from Randy Bacchus. He's going to tell his personal family story about what their impact from high-potency THC. So, and then we'll open it up for your questions. We're going to try to keep it all, as we promised, around an hour.
I want to thank people for taking time out of what I know is a very busy time for you to hear about the issues with cannabis and what we think is really an urgent need to do some legislative fixes to help American youth. And this has been an issue for me for a very long time. I grew up in the 1970s when the average potency, THC potency of cannabis was 2%. And when I was in college, I used that drug and I got very sick and ended up in an emergency room overnight. I still have very vivid memories of that, not good ones. And it's just a fact that I also have a family that's been greatly affected by addiction with a number of substances, but marijuana was definitely a part of that. And that influenced me to go into psychiatry and into addiction psychiatry. And then once I became an addiction specialist, over the years I've watched people that I was trying to help tell me that didn't I know that marijuana was a medicine when I advised them that they might want to cut back or stop based on what I saw happening in their lives. It was a medicine. It was good for sleep. It was good for relaxing. It was good for anxiety. It was good for depression. But these people also kept relapsing on other drugs as well, and they just never really recovered. In 2013, I went to SAMHSA as their first chief medical officer, and I tried to get leadership there to work on some products that would just start to inform the American people of some of the health harms of marijuana, because what I'm going to show you in terms of the science is that we've known about this for a very long time. But there wasn't much interest in SAMHSA leadership, and by the way, there wasn't any interest at the National Institute on Drug Abuse either in this particular topic at that time. In 2017, I came back to SAMHSA as the Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use, and now I was the administrator of SAMHSA, and so I was able to make this an issue. And I was really very grateful because President Trump was interested in this issue as well. He asked me to brief him on this topic. I did, and he was very supportive of the work, really the excellent work that SAMHSA did during his first term on this issue. And I hope it will continue to be an important issue for the new administration. But today I'm going to talk about some of the science to give you some of the background on why we're concerned about health harms. So there are large amounts of recent research data that show the dangers of cannabis use. It just is not a true statement to say the jury is out on whether there are health harms with cannabis product use or marijuana use. There are substantial negative health impacts for many people, especially mental health harms, and this is especially true for children and for the developing fetus. Again, it's been available for years. I'm going to point out to you how old some of this data is so that you can see that we've known this for a long time and it's really time to do something about it. But I think it's worth talking about, why do people like this drug so much? What is it? Why do people like it? It's a plant. It has more than 550 chemical compounds. More than 100 of those are cannabinoids. But when we think about marijuana, we think about the cannabinoid that we just call THC. It's delta-9 THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. It is the main active compound in the plant, and it's responsible for high, and it's responsible for the addictive potential. But THC also does a lot of other things when people use it. It affects other chemicals in the brain that are involved with really important functions like thinking, decision-making, memory, motor function, and ongoing use of products that contain THC. They are able to worsen psychosis, anxiety, and depression, and I'll show you some data on that. And THC concentration has been genetically optimized by the growers of cannabis and those who make synthetic products to increase those desired effects, the high that people get. As you know, marijuana is widely available in our country. 39 states and territories allow medical marijuana use. 24 states and territories have legalized recreational use. But I wonder if you knew this. There are studies that we can do to find out what's the rate at which people will become addicted to a substance. So there are people who study that. So if you ask somebody if they use a drug, what percentage of them who say that they do will go on to develop a problem or an addiction or a use disorder with that drug? For cocaine, it's 21%. For alcohol, it's 23%. For heroin, it's 30%. And for cannabis, it's 30%. And this is on CDC's website right now. That's where I got this data. Why is that? Well, it's because it's so easy to access marijuana and cannabis products, and it's because of the ever-increasing potency of this drug. Cannabis products are now called hard drugs. In Europe, they are considered hard drugs because of the rate of addiction. And the industry increases THC content in its products to increase addiction potential. And you have a captive audience. They keep buying your product. This is data from the University of Mississippi. When DEA gets marijuana and cannabis products off the street, they send those products to the University of Mississippi, and they analyzed them for THC and for cannabidiol. You've probably heard sometimes it's said, oh, the cannabidiol content is optimized in certain species of marijuana that people choose to use. Well, what this shows is that back in 1996, it was about 4% THC. By 2022, that was up to about 15%. Cannabidiol hasn't changed. It's always been far less than 1%, and that hasn't gone up. Now, on the other half of this slide, this is just some screenshots that I took. It's very easy to find this kind of information online. It's basically 2 clicks, one to get to the sales site, and the second to say you're over 21. And this is a picture of the drug, and what they tell you is the THC content is up to 42%. And they also tell you what it's good for. It's good for blasting off into outer space. It's good for one-on-ones with extraterrestrials, and it's good for feeling out of this world. It's kind of silly, but what it's not is a medicine. And this is an infographic from SAMHSA. This is from the 2023 National Survey on Drug Use and Health. First thing that I think it's important to understand is that we do have a mental health and substance use disorder crisis in the United States. We've seen a better than 100% increase in substance use disorders from 2019, the year before the pandemic started, to 2023, the last year of the pandemic. This is probably related to a lot of the restrictions and difficulties that people experienced during the pandemic. It's also related to more flexibilities and acceptance of drug use in our country. But what SAMHSA is telling us now is that about 62 million people are using marijuana. That's a 28% increase since 2019. And nearly 23 million of those people are vaping marijuana and cannabis products. And that's important because vaping is actually the most efficient way to get THC quickly into your lungs and to your brain. It's the fastest way to do it. And sometimes it's easier to vape the concentrates. A lot of people will vape very high potency concentrates, which again are very, very impairing. About 20% of our children, aged 12 to 20, are marijuana users, and about 11% of them are vaping this drug. Yeah. And this just is not the drug of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Unfortunately, a lot of the folks that are making decisions from a government perspective on this product are people who used the drug during the 70s, 80s, and 90s when it was a very different drug. We've seen huge increases in THC content since the 1990s, better than 35% in plant, over 90% in extracts and concentrates. And there's lots of ways to use this drug now. It's not just a drug that you smoke. You can dab it, you can eat it, you can vape it. It's in sodas, it's in lotions. You can even use it as a suppository. Just pretty much any way you want to use it, it's available. National Survey on Drug Use and Health, and I'll show you a little bit more data on this, has shown the association of marijuana use with serious mental health conditions and with other illicit drug use and alcohol use. And use in adolescence puts these kids at increased risk for psychotic disorders in adulthood, and it is linked to suicidal behavior and death. The risk for psychotic disorders, and this is from the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, they tell us that THC potency, the frequency of use, and as the age of first use decreases. So the younger someone is when they start to use this drug, the more likely they are to have these serious mental health effects. This is data from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. This is from 2019. It's actually the last year that I was there to analyze the data from that survey. And SAMHSA staff did a wonderful job putting this together for me. I asked them to look at our NSDA data and to tell me, is there a relationship between cannabis use, between marijuana, and other ill health effects that we look at in the National Survey on Drug Use and Health? And this is what they gave me. The red bars are people that have never used marijuana or a cannabis product. The blue bar is people who have used in the last year. And the green bar are people that use daily or nearly every day. And what this shows is a strong relationship between marijuana use and past year opioid misuse, including fentanyl use, past month alcohol use, and that's heavy alcohol use, past year stimulant use, both cocaine and methamphetamine, past year major depression, and past year serious mental illness, including psychosis. And we've known this, as I mentioned, for a very long time in terms of the link of marijuana use to psychosis. This is data, please look at the date, 1987. We saw a publication that told us that the greater the number of uses of marijuana, the greater the risk for schizophrenia. 1987, this is when cannabis THC potency was 2%. And the other figure shows, one is from 2002, it shows a higher risk of, we call them schizophrenia-like psychoses because sometimes we don't know if the person is going to go on and develop that disease of schizophrenia or whether it's a one-time event. So these investigators were looking at schizophrenia-like psychoses and found that if you started using this drug before you were 15, you were 4.5 times more likely to develop psychosis. If you started by age 18, 1.6 times as likely as people who didn't use this drug to become psychotic. And this is data out of Colorado, first state to put recreational marijuana in place. And what you see here is emergency room visits for toxicities related to marijuana or cannabis product use. And the black bars just show an increase in the number of visits year over year, and the gray bars show the number of visits that were related to mental health concerns when toxicities were presented. So you can see that most of the visits to the EDs were related to mental health effects of the use of marijuana. And the line graph is coroner data. This shows the number of suicides where cannabis metabolites were present in the decedent, and you can see that that number is going up year over year. In this paper, and I have the reference there for anybody that wants to ever look at it, or I'll provide it to you myself, you would see that for the children that died by suicide, 30% had cannabis present, as opposed to 10% who had alcohol present. It's a very sad tale of what happens when our children get involved with this drug. And we also know that people who use cannabis chronically lose intellect over time. This is a very interesting study done by Meyer and colleagues of a cohort of people, over 1,000 people who were born in the mid-1970s and followed from age 13 to age 38. And they were tested for IQ and other neuropsychological variables. And they were also asked questions about cannabis use. And what you see here, for people who never used marijuana, they actually gain an IQ point by age 38. But for people that used and continued to use, the more use for the longer period of time, you lose up to 6 IQ points. Now, since the average IQ is 100, that's a 6% loss of intellect. And that has major consequences. This is from 2014. Silence and colleagues published looking at people who started using cannabis by age 17 and the outcomes they had at age 30. And what you see here, the red bar and the crimson bar, those are people who used weekly or more or were daily cannabis users. And what you see is they have much higher rates of cannabis dependence, much higher rates of illicit drug use, suicide attempts. They're much less likely to complete high school, and they're less likely to get a terminal degree. They're more likely to be on social welfare programs in adulthood. And this is some data, again, from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which looks at pregnant women who were marijuana users or not. And what you see here is that a woman who has any past year marijuana use is much more likely to be a cocaine user, an opioid pain reliever misuser, alcohol user, to have problems with suicidality, serious mental illness, and major depression. And we know and have known for years about negative effects of cannabis on the developing fetus, fetal growth restriction, preterm births, low birth weights, stillbirths, and more likely to be admitted to the neonatal intensive care unit. Developmentally, these kids have memory problems. They're not good problem solvers. They're more likely to have attention deficit disorder, and they're more likely to have behavioral issues. These kids are really disadvantaged before they even get started in life. And this is just some screenshots I took of cannabis products. These are clearly oriented toward children. And if you don't take anything else out of this, I hope you will take back that we need to stop the marketing of these products to children. And there's another risk, and that is in psychoactive hemp intoxicants. This is what we've called an unintended loophole of the 2018 Farm Bill. As you know, hemp products are legal in this country. They're not regulated. And so what's happened is that there have been some alternate forms of THC that have been extracted from hemp. The one that you hear the most about is Delta-8. Delta-8 THC is less potent than Delta-9 THC, but that just means you have to use more of it to get the same effect, and people do. And it's been a big problem in terms of toxicity and poisonings. FDA has come out with an advisory to the American public, letting people know about toxicities with these hemp-derived intoxicants that include psychosis, loss of consciousness, nausea, vomiting, confusion, and especially in children. Why in children? Because there's no age limits on buying these products. They are very widely available. You can get them at gas stations, convenience stores, you can get them online, you can get them at tobacco shops, you can get them pretty much anywhere, and it's very easy, and they have a lot of milligrams of THC in them. This has become such a problem that in 21 states, the attorney generals in 21 states have asked Congress to give them tools so that they can do something about these products in their states. And we also know, this is from the state of Connecticut. Connecticut has reported marijuana in their state laced with fentanyl. They found this with overdoses and deaths in people who were not known to be opioid users. And so the state toxicology lab analyzed some of these samples and found that the marijuana does indeed contain fentanyl. And so the reason I tell you this is because marijuana is now linked to the opioids crisis. And it's something that we should start to inform our people about so that they can make the best decisions for their own health and safety. So what can Congress do? Congress can support a Farm Bill reauthorization that closes that psychoactive hemp loophole that allows drug-infused THC products to be sold to minors. Congress can oppose the Safer Banking Bill unless it includes safeguards related to THC marketing, packaging, and potency. Congress can support proposals to institute limits on THC potency, limits on the serving sizes of THC, and marketing to minors. Congress can do that. You can change that situation. It's so important. And you can do that through the reauthorization of the SUPPORT Act. I know Congress is working on that right now. Add language to protect our children. You can direct the FDA to make recommendations regarding high THC concentrations. Do we need THC products that are better than 90% potent and pure? Robust prevention education can continue to be supported by Congress. Congress already does that through its prevention funding to SAMHSA and other forms as well, but Congress can make our people aware that they really support that kind of intervention. And Congress can direct SAMHSA to develop a program such as what we do right now. It's called SINAR for tobacco, SAMHSA was responsible for monitoring programs in every state where people would go to places that sold tobacco, mainly cigarettes, and make sure that they didn't sell to minors. We can do the same thing for cannabis products.
So, hello everyone, James Corbett, Initium Health. Happy to be here in front of you today. So, I moved to Colorado in 2013, and it was right before 2014 when the legalization of recreational marijuana happened. And all my friends started snickering when I told them I was moving to Colorado. It was a big joke, like, oh, I know why you're going there. I'm from Queens, New York, go Mets. Well, now it goes over well in DC. I'll say that it was a very interesting time at that period. I'd come there for a healthcare job, and you saw lines of people around shops. You saw the excitement. Everybody wanted to come to Colorado to visit. And with that came the understanding that Colorado was taking the nation, and if not, in some respects the world, down a very unique path. And I like to say that as they led the nation in recreational marijuana, we also need to lead the nation in highlighting the risk of that marijuana. So I get to do the fun work. I get to take all the hard research that's been done by the person who just spoke in front of us and researchers. Colorado University was awarded by the state funding in order to study this impact and to do an educational campaign. They read 60,000 articles on the topic. They then gave us all that research and they said, turn it into something that people want to make sense of. Turn it into something that the youth will appreciate and understand. So we did a lot of research and we came up with a concept called the T on THC. And the concept of the T on THC, for many of you know that notion of the T, the skinny, the inside scoop. We wanted people to know that we were not giving them propaganda. I think many in the room know the study, the thing that we all remember, this is your brain on drugs, turned out to be an epic fail. Turned out to make some people want to try it. Not me. It turned out that people thought it was propaganda, that it was fear-mongering, and that does not work. So we had to study the data and come up with a process and something that did work. The T on THC, get the facts. And even know the risk. It was our initial tagline. We came up with know the risk. We had people saying, no, that's propaganda. You can't use that. So we had to be very careful, particularly with youth, and how it is that we described it. We came up with a website. This website highlights the risks of high concentration cannabis. It also focuses specifically, and our campaign does, on youth, pregnant people, and also parents and mentors who need a source of information to be able to have conversations with their children. One of our original taglines was cannabis. Should we talk about cannabis? And our research with young individuals highlighted that they don't use the word cannabis. They told us cannabis, who uses that? It said moto, marijuana, THC. And we came up with campaigns and they consistently told us, no, that does not work. So this came out of the mouth of one of the students that we were doing focus groups with. And he said, is marijuana becoming your best friend? Because he realized that he was losing friends and losing focus in sports and other things, and that marijuana was kind of consuming his life. This is what it looks like on the billboards. And we've plastered Colorado with billboards and kiosks and poppers and gas station pumps with this information. Here's another one. We talked to psychiatrists. They thought that they had patients like this. They had young students who came in. Some get high, some get lost, and that THC can increase psychosis risk. I also want to highlight the importance of color here. We were told that black and colors worked with youth, but it didn't work for other sectors. They thought it was too scary. Another one was legal does not equal safe. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. We particularly wanted that message to those who are 21 and above, who said, okay, now I can, okay, but should you? Very different than the legality of it. And the third one, and you'll notice the green here, in the background is more soothing and calming, and something that parents and moms indicated that would be more soothing and appreciated than the dark colors if you use baby uses, wanting them to recognize what the risk was for the children. And I can tell you, people of all different types of means and income levels talk to me about this now. They know we're in this campaign. And I was surprised how many people of high wealth were taking an edible, go to sleep when they're pregnant. They did not know. They did not know. And studies show if you want behavior change, you have to move from pre-contemplation, making people aware there's an issue, to contemplation, I now think there's an issue and I should change it, to behavior change. That's a journey. And the messaging needs to hit you along that journey where you are on that journey. This is one of our highest performing ads. Is your teen dabbing? A third of teen cannabis users are using high concentration dabs. Now, first of all, some people think dabbing is a dance, and it was, But I'll tell you, parents were intrigued by this. What is dabbing? What are my kids up to? So they started to research. They started to come to the sites. They started to realize that their kids were getting 90% THC at times with dab and wax. And the issue is that how quickly that THC gets to the brain in a record time. And is the brain prepared for that? And sadly, in Colorado, we live in what's called the suicide belt. Those western states, Colorado, Utah, and other places, higher than average risk than the rest of the country for suicide. So you bring legal marijuana and you bring it to a state with higher than average risk of suicide, and you have the perfect storm. And we'll hear some stories about that later. We also had a video with a woman named Laura Stack who lost her son, Johnny, to suicide. She now speaks to schools around the state, 300 schools a year, on this very topic. So we're talking to parents about how to have the conversation. And we have effective communication tips for parents. That website directs them on how to have the conversation. I had to have the conversation with my 10-year-old son. We're at a baseball field, and he saw a sign that said a little circle and crossing out, cigarettes, no smoking, no dogs off a leash. And he saw one that circled with a red line on a marijuana leaf. And he said, "Dad, what's that?" And I wasn't prepared for the conversation. When they say you have to have the conversation in middle school. So parents need equipped, they need to be ready for these conversations, and the T on THC allows them to do so. Effective responses to cannabis questions. What if I just use it to relax for anxiety? And one of our biggest challenges, we're fighting disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation when the industry intentionally twists the facts. It's flower, it's natural, forgetting that it's been distorted to have high concentration. We also have a podcast with academics and professors highlighting the risks. We also have influencers. I want to show you a short video from one of our influencers in a little bit. I want to highlight the importance of getting to people in different mediums. We had art exhibits for both adults and children. The children-based one or the youth-based one, this is an image one of the kids came up with. They wanted to show an image of a roach. So that's a roach, which is a portion of marijuana, and they gave it legs. So this is a roach on your brain. They wanted to illustrate to their peers the impact of marijuana on the brain. Right now I'm going to show you a video by one of our influencers, former NFL player Brandon Lloyd.
I played 11 years in the National Football League. And when I got to the NFL, cannabis was everywhere. But it wasn't something that I was interested in until I came to Denver in 2009. There was a lot of stress in my private life. And then the stress of being on a team was a lot. You know, I would travel with it everywhere. I would get it in oil and experiment it with vaping. I would smoke 3 and 4 different high concentration cannabises in one setting. We're talking about THC levels that are pushing 30% in some of these strains. I was experiencing a lot of paranoia and mood swings and highs and lows, and I realized that this wasn't going to be helpful in my football career because of the incredible dependency on it. All those tropes about high concentration marijuana not being addictive were just so false. And once you break through to the other side of the addiction, you'll see that there's way better highs out there. I'm Brandon Lloyd, and I want to share my story of my experience with high concentration cannabis.
So videos like this are tremendously helpful. The fact that Brandon Lloyd has decided to highlight that he had an addiction to cannabis and speaks to schools across Colorado and events in Colorado, let people think about it in a different way. It particularly helps with athletes who, in places like Sterling, Colorado, where I'll be next month, they highlight there that there's not much to do in this small rural community, and they're athletes. They don't want to be doing the drugs. They want to stay in the forum. So we're going up there to speak to 400 students. And it's on the website, the T on THC. I think it's something you can pass along, and it really has tremendous impact on getting people to realize there's an alternative. So the story that he tells is a story of overcoming it and highlighting that through alternative coping mechanisms, there's other things you can do. And in Colorado, a lot of that led to being in the great outdoors, so you show images of that. And that's the key. The key is in every state, what needs to happen is an educational campaign that highlights that state. So it could be surfing in California, it could be going to a Mets game in New York, alternative coping mechanisms so that you don't have to focus on what people are saying is a coping mechanism. Marijuana is a coping mechanism. So in closing, I want to highlight that our campaign really takes account of the data. It looks at the youth population in Colorado, the young adults, pregnant women,